many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hey, welcome along. It is COP27, day 3, day 12, whatever. We're going to try to pretend to take it very seriously. Mark Morano, who's been on this show multiple times, is live in Sharm el Shakedown, working on his tan while saving the planet. Closer to home, we have, there he is on his camel. Closer to home, we have no camels there. Closer to home, we have a humanitarian crisis in southern England. We are told by all the other media that we need to process asylum seekers quicker. Many productive Albanian men are having to wait far too long to be processed and join their cousins' drugs and prostitution ring in Manchester. Maybe we need to hire more Albanians to work as refugee processors. Or maybe we need to extend the Eurostar to Tirana. Lawrence Fox is here to give us his take on that. The cost of living is the cost of lockdown. Jasmine Birtles we'll take a look at the state of the economy, if you can still dignify it by the term economy. Conceivably, if our political class weren't so intent on digging the hole deeper, we could get out of our economic woes. But the other damage from the lunacy of the COVID years, from quarantining our children to jabbing perfectly healthy people, will be with us for a generation. Jane Harris has yet another aspect of what has gone wrong. Plus, of course, the most important part of the show, that is you. Are you hot for climate reparations? Are all these Albanian prostitution rings in the UK increasing our carbon footprint? Should we replace London's human-trafficked sex slaves with biodegradable, wind-powered blow-up dolls made from recycled quinoa? Email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet me at gbnews. It's all coming up after Ray Addison with the latest headlines. All yours, Ray.
Thanks, Mark. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. New allegations have been made against Sir Gavin Williamson. The former Deputy Chief Whip, Anne Milton, has accused him of trying to use an MP's financial difficulties as leverage. She also claims he sent an expletive-filled email about a female civil servant. It follows a report in The Guardian that Sir Gavin told a senior civil servant to slit your throat while he was Defence Secretary. Downing Street has described bullying allegations as serious. Sir Gavin denies bullying. MPs have voted against the release of documents about security breaches by the Home Secretary. Members rejected the motion by Labour with a majority of 92. The Prime Minister brought Miss Braverman back into government just 6 days after she resigned from Liz Truss's cabinet after breaking the ministerial code. Ms Braverman broke security protocols by forwarding a highly sensitive document about immigration to her personal email. She then sent it on to a fellow MP. The RMT union says strikes on London's underground service will still go ahead. It's after last-minute talks failed to resolve a dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. Union officials say Transport for London has refused its offer to suspend strike action in exchange for a pause to job cuts. Well, meanwhile, more than 70,000 university lecturers and staff will walk out for 3 days later this month. The University and College Union says staff at over 150 universities will stop work over pay, conditions and pensions. The strikes will take place on November 24th, 25th and the 30th and could impact 2.5 million students. Extinction Rebellion co-founder Roger Hallam has been remanded in custody for almost a month. He was arrested along with 7 other people accused of planning to join the Just Stop Oil protests on the M25. They've been charged with conspiracy to cause a public nuisance. Activists have disrupted traffic on England's busiest motorway for the past 2 days. 16 protesters were arrested today, and 22 people have been charged for actions which took place yesterday. Donald Trump has cast his vote in Florida as Americans across the country head to the polls in the midterm elections.
We love you! We love you, man!
The former US president left the polling station accompanied by his wife Melania and to the cheers of supporters. Currently, the Democrats control both the House of Representatives and the Senate. President Biden is warning that a Republican victory could weaken the country's democracy. And one lucky ticket holder has won the almost £1.8 billion jackpot in the US Powerball lottery. The unnamed California resident ended 40 drawings without a winner, which pushed the top prize to a new world record. They can now choose to take almost half of the prize money as a cash lump sum or have the whole amount in 29 annual payments. The odds of matching all 6 numbers were 292 million to 1. Not bad. On TV, online and on DAB Plus radio, this is GB News, the People's Channel. Back now to Mark Steyn.
Coming up tonight, we've got all the big issues covered. The one and only Mark Morano will be here live with us from the big COP27 climate Beano at Sharm El Shakedown.
We're heading to the United Nations Climate Summit, and this is the way we chose to go. See you there soon.
That's actually not an environmentally responsible mode of transport. As I understand it, dromedary flatulence is even more devastating to the planet than bovine flatulence for the emissions of that camel. Mark could have flown in on Al Gore's private jet. By the way, if you're unsure about flying off on holiday these days, I always take a flatulent camel as my emotional support animal. 10 minutes out of Heathrow, you'll have the first-class cabin all to yourself. Works every time. Incidentally, in many parts of the Arab world, they like drinking camel urine. So I'm just giving Mark a heads up if he parks at a motorway service area and draws a crowd. The World Health Organization says this is true. This is true. The World Health Organization says drinking camel urine spreads coronaviruses. Seriously. Look at this. There are the camels up at the top, and then if you scroll down the page, you'll find Middle East respiratory syndrome coronavirus. MERS-CoV is a virus transferred to humans from infected dromedary camels. You thought it was the Chi-Coms? It's the camels at COP27 who are doing this to us. So Sharm el Shakedown could see a deadly convergence between climate change hysteria and coronavirus panic. Time to line up and get the old jabber, jabber, jabber for the camel pox. Mark Morano's going to be here in a moment. He's seeing the sights. Egypt is renowned for its belly dancers. Unfortunately, the only one working at the COP27 summit is Boris Johnson. Yeah, shake it, baby. Woo! Meanwhile, back in the real world, the war on flatulence continues. The Irish can't find any virgins to sacrifice. So for weeks now, they've been preparing to slaughter their cattle to appease the climate gods. Quote, Irish farmers, this is from The Guardian, Irish farmers say they will be forced to cull cows to meet flatulence targets. Fact, Irish dairy herds are responsible for 37.5% of the nation's emissions. Under the protocol, as you know, there's a soft border in Ireland. So they try to waft a lot of the flatulence up north and get it added to the UK numbers. But we all know unionist cows don't flatulate, not since 1973 when Ian Paisley told them to knock it off. Nevertheless, it's time now for a massive bonfire of the bovines. Burning a Holstein or a couple of jerseys could reduce your energy bill this winter or power your electric vehicle for a couple of 100 yards. The World Health Organization has weighed in on the global warming. Here's what the WHO head honcho, China shill Dr. Tedros, had to say about it today. The climate crisis is a health crisis. And you know what that means under the new WHO health treaty that His Majesty's government was bonkers enough to sign on to. Lockdowns, masks, no freedom of movement, vaccine mandates, but just for a little bit. 2 weeks to flatulate the curve. Just because we're broke doesn't mean we can't be even broker. As Toby Young pointed out yesterday, Britain was the first nation to industrialise. So under the climate reparations Rishi Rich has indicated his support for, we're going to be stuck with the lion's share of those reparations. Meanwhile, while our decadent ruling class prances around Egypt, flatulating more than the average Connemara bullock, we have open borders on the south coast, which pretty much ensures you can never slaughter enough cattle to make up for the incoming Albanians bulking up your nation's carbon footprint. The incoming migrant tide on England's southern shore is real, in a way that rising sea levels in the Maldives next century are not. And yet a zillionth of our government's energy goes into fixing the former as compared to the latter. Lawrence Fox is the founder of the Reclaim Party and soon to be hosting his own show on GB News. The contrast between these preening, twit-striking attitudes in Egypt right now and the country they're actually responsible for governing, where they're not doing anything about this business at the southern on the southern shore, is very striking.
It's striking for all of these virtue signalling things, aren't they? You see the RNLI helping people along, just like the police help along Just Stop Oil. Yeah, it's whichever virtuous cause you can protect. It's fine. And Rishi's gone. I mean, Truss lost her job for what? 14.5 billion quid's worth of corporation tax. Right. And Rishi's just lobbed in 16.3 billion of, hello, we love you, let's look after the climate. It's absolute madness. And who is in charge of it? Who genuinely cares? We used to live in a country whereby you looked after your family, you raised your children, and you wished a better life for them. And then if you had any spare money, you looked after everybody else. We now live in a country where you steal off your own countrymen who've got nothing anyway, and you give it to other people. Yeah. It doesn't seem to make any sense to me.
No, you made a very interesting point there, that the markets, which said, OK, Liz Truss, you're done, you're toast, stick a fork in her, you're over, for whatever it was, the 14.5 billion, you can get away with giving that kind of money away to climate change or to Ukraine or to whatever. It just seems to be whether the markets approve, whether you're, and it's exactly the same with what you were saying about the RNLI helping the migrants and the police helping Just Stop Oil. You know, the police will harass and detain someone preaching from the Bible in a shopping centre because his cause isn't approved. And it's the same thing with the expenditure. Like you can, certain causes are approved and certain ones aren't.
Well, I was stopped on the way to the tube today. I was stopped by a gay Indian guy, and he went, "Are you Lawrence Fox?" And I was like, "Oh no, we're in trouble here." And he just gave me a huge hug. Right. And he went, "I feel really sorry for you being an oppressed minority in your own capital city." And it's like we are trying desperately to undo all of the damage that we've told that we've done, rather than becoming prosperous and hopeful and optimistic for our children. And that's the world that most of us want to live in. This guy who I met on the street and most people I talk to all the time, he's like, we want prosperity, optimism, hope. We don't want Rishi Sunak or Rashid Sunak telling us...
that's the official Joe Biden rendering of his name.
And we're about to watch the Democrats, I hope, be hung, drawn and quartered in the midterms as a result of trying to sell this woke politics to your average person. So if a gay Indian dude, and not that I'm trying to be identitarian about it, but he was a gay Indian dude, turns around and says, I'm completely on side with what you say, then you've got, you know, a lot of the public are here going, this doesn't make sense. We don't need to be dragging these guys off boats, not dragging them, helping them down off boats. It's about, you know, you want to come into England, come in legally.
Well, let me ask you about that, because I'm always astonished if they mention this on the BBC. On the BBC, the migrant thing is presented as a humanitarian crisis. In other words, the solution is to find a way to process all these nice young Albanians with their talent for drugs and prostitution and everything, and to just process them far more expeditiously. Whereas, in fact, what particularly Tory voters want is just for these guys not to set foot on land and for them to be turned back and go back to France or Albania.
They absolutely should be. I'm really sorry, but if there are more Albanian men in British prisons than there are in Albanian prisons, Albania is not, as far as I know, a war zone, then this is economic migrants. And then we make a government plan. They legislate for economic migrants. And they go, right, we need X number of economic migrants to fulfill X number of jobs in the British economy, which will help grow the British economy. But just this unfettered, virtuous, welcome. I'm like, all right, mate, you know, from your little charity saying that Suella Braverman's cruelty camp, you fill up your house with Albanians and then we'll have a chat. Because they're the exact thing they accuse us of. We're commonsensical. We're saying we want people in this country. We're a welcoming, tolerant country. We watch the disaster of multiculturalism. I mean, the disaster of multiculturalism in this country. And we need to adopt a different system, which is like, you cross the 11-mile border and we'll come up to you with a rubber boat and we'll bump back into you and send you back to Johnny Frenchy.
Yeah. Which is what you get the feeling Suella Braverman would like to do. You can't solve a problem if you can't identify it accurately. And if she wants to identify it as ensuring that these people never set foot on British soil, isn't the answer then just to pull out of the European Court of Human Rights? And anything that sort of doesn't actually get you there is only going to mean more of what we see every night.
Well, it's tricky because we've got to nick Articles 8 and Article 10 from the EHCR anyway for the UK law. But yes, fundamentally, we need to get the hell out of it because we have a wonderful, prosperous country. No one has given us a vision post-Brexit. No one has turned around to us and said, this is what the UK is going to look like post-Brexit. They've just gone, right, we'll just do more of the same. We need some proper leadership. But we do need Article 8 and we do need Article 10. So it's tricky.
Well, the thing is that thing dates from 1950. Yeah. And it's weird because there's nothing, I mean, if you walk around central London, there's nothing really left of 1950. And if you were to propose, you'd say, where did all the chaps in bowler hats go? Why isn't homosexuality illegal? But somehow this particular bit of 1950 from a completely changed world back when one continent, Europe, owned another continent, Africa, in its entirety. This one little bit of 1950 is now and forever, according to all the progressives.
Well, you don't have a country if you don't have a border. America is about to vote on this evening. I think the border, energy prices, all of these things are going to be voted on. Crime and all this stuff is going to be voted on tonight. But if you do not have a border, you do not have a country. And we do not have a border in this country. And that is a major problem for the United Kingdom.
How many of the... occasionally you'll hear a Tory backbencher say something broadly reflective of his party's base on this, but how many are just joking and just actually just figuring there's nothing can be done about it, you just need to string it out for the last couple of years of totally non-conservative government?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is sad that but look, Rishi's done some good things. He's put Suella in, he's put Kemi in. So he's got the support of those two people. Kemi's amazing on culture, and Suella actually means it when she says invasion. It's the right word. Yeah. You know, as much as they hate it, it's the right word. And you need strong language to deal with strong problems. So as long as Rashid Sunak really backs his Equalities Minister and his Home Secretary, and he allows them to do most of the legwork, seeing as he's spent the last 45 years in Prada loafers, then we'll see what will happen.
Well, do you think it communicates weakness, him saying, oh, I'm not going to bother going to COP27, my place is here taking care of you poor people, and then he, oh, sorry, I got that wrong, and then he goes off to this COP
What's he doing at COP27? What's COP27 got to do with the British voter? What on earth has it got to do with the person who decides what they vote for? It's a supernatural globalist nightmare. I want to vote for the policies that go on in my country. Yeah. I don't want Rishi to hop on his plane, stick his poppy on his very well-fitted shirt and his Prada loafers, and then tell me what's going to happen with having been honoured to meet Greta. No, that was Jeremy Vine. But
oh God,
you know what I mean? British people who pay their taxes want to have a say about what their taxes go on.
Well, they're old-fashioned enough to think that the government of the United Kingdom should be preoccupied with the government of the United Kingdom. It's very weird. Very weird that saving the planet evidently appeals to them more than saving the southern coast. Thank you very much, Lawrence, and we can't wait for your show. You don't know when it starts, and I don't think we're sure. It's what is it, Monday to Thursday, 8 p.m.
That's right. Yeah, there's Mark, bad news.
There's nothing on then anyway. Thank you, Lawrence. Let me know your thoughts. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Let's go to Sharm El Shakedown, where the aforementioned Mark Morano has dismounted from his camel. How are things among the globalists, Mark?
Well, it's about as you would expect here. This has been the usual suspects arrived. Al Gore opened up the session here, and this is another COP rally where it's all about wealth transfer, money, reparations, loss and damage. Al Gore went beyond billions, tens of billions. He's now talking $4 trillion annually, and he doesn't even want it from governments. He wants some kind of corporate spending on climate. Al Gore has upped the money game like I've never seen in the history of all these climate summits.
So $4 trillion should be spent every year to ameliorate climate change. That's fantastic. Except it's not enough, Mark. We need to make it $40 trillion. That's the only way they'll know we're serious about it.
It's exactly right. But here's what's interesting. Al Gore claims there's great entrepreneurial opportunities in investing these trillions of dollars annually. If that's the case, what's stopping the private sector from doing this on their own? Why does Al Gore need to come here and urge governments and have some kind of government corporate collusion, mandates, subsidies, and all of this to make that happen? It's proof in the pudding, Mark, that there is no way that this is a good investment. They have to be coerced into making it. They have to be scared into making it. That's why Greta has rightfully boycotted this conference. She won't be here for the first time since she rose to climate stardom fame, and it's because she rightly called this conference a bunch of greenwashing, scam, and lying, and all sorts of things. She knows what's going on. Of course, she's now condemning capitalism, free markets. She doesn't think the UN's radical enough, but at least she recognizes what's happening here.
Yeah, she's got the right idea, because I saw my old friend Dominic Lawson, I think it was in the Times this morning, who dismissed it as a kind of great gathering of losers. There's a lot of people who've decided to stay away, not just Greta Thunberg, but also Justin Trudeau. It's almost as if there is something, the whiff of staleness. Despite the $4 trillion annual expenditure we're promised, there is the whiff of the loser summit about this, isn't there?
There is, but no matter how much of a loser summit this is, they just announced that in 2026, COP31, Australia is already making the bid to host it. They're already 4 years ahead planning COPs of these conference of parties. So they're already on +4. That's how successful. And that tells you, Mark, there's no criteria, no definition by which the climate could ever be solved. We are on a highway to hell unless we go along with this agenda. So we're told by the powers that be here.
Well, the UN Secretary General said, I think his exact phrase was, the world has got to come together, or if not, we're all committing collective suicide. But isn't the talk of $4 trillion expenditures on this at a time when every Western nation is broke? Some of them are facing a catastrophic winter. They don't have any reliable source of heat to get them through the winter. Germany certainly doesn't. Isn't the UN Secretary General got it completely backwards? And in fact, what we're doing right now is collective suicide.
He absolutely does. I've talked to many of the delegates here. I'm conducting interviews, and here's what they're telling me, that Russia fears doubling down on green energy more than anything, as if Putin's going to quake in his boots when all of Europe continues to shut down their domestic fossil fuels. They actually believe this is the way to handle it. Al Gore has actually said we cannot, the EU president actually said that the way to handle the energy shortages is a massive increase in investment in green energy. How is that going to help people who can't afford to pay their bills this winter? They're talking about some fantasy years, decades beyond any foreseeable future where it might maybe be some technological breakthrough. This is about the biggest disconnect I've ever seen. They're doubling down on failure, all the while claiming that this is the greatest success story, and that this is a great opportunity. They see what's happening in Europe, the United States, all of this energy collapse as the great opportunity, and that's why they are so excited here, because they have people in a very vulnerable position, and they're going to do everything they can to continue these bankrupting policies.
Well, it's funny that you mention Al Gore, because I don't think many people have actually given Al Gore a thought in the last 20 years or so. I should explain for non-Americans, he used to be vice president under Calvin Coolidge or somebody. It was all a long time ago. But Al Gore understands how this green scam thing works, because he's basically become a multi-billionaire or whatever it is by now. Maybe he's a multi-trillionaire by buying carbon credits from himself to offset his private jet. He'll buy some carbon credits and from Al Gore Carbon Credits Inc. And that way it all. And so obviously these guys think there's no reason not to apply that model to the economy at large. But there's no evidence any of this sort of investing in green energy. The minute you take away the investment, these companies collapse. There's nothing holding them up.
Yeah, in fact, just 2 weeks ago, a Goldman Sachs top economist said that after 10 years and $3.8 trillion, the United States was able to lower the fossil fuel energy production by 1%, briefly, and it looks like it went back up. $3.8 trillion to achieve bupkis. Now, guess what? The delegates, the activists here, don't look at it as failure. They look at it as, well, we need to double, triple, quadruple, quintuple that investment. Obviously, we're not doing enough. This is evidence that the plan works. It just means we have to have a bigger commitment. That's literally the mindset of the delegates and activists here.
Yeah, $3.8 trillion is chump change. No wonder it didn't work. It should have been $380 trillion. Let's borrow it from the Chinese. They seem to know what they're doing. Thank you very much, Mark. Yeah, have a last word on me, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, this idea of net zero, this has to be a narrative change, and it's got to come from all the parties, at least the so-called conservative parties in Europe. It's got to come from Republicans in the United States. We've got to abolish the idea that net zero is any kind of worthy goal. It is the destruction of humanity and will do nothing for the planet if, in fact, we face any kind of climate crisis, which we don't. So that's my screaming message here, because otherwise we have people here warning of ecocide. We have the climate tipping point clocks here. This is a bonkers summit that we've allowed too much credit, and they're getting more and more power.
Yeah, that's very true, Mark. Don't forget to check out Mark's terrific new book on the Great Reset. It is well worth your time. We have some breaking news for you. The Minister of State without portfolio and the former Education Secretary, Gavin Williamson. He was in big trouble. He was accused of bullying. He told some civil servant to go jump out of the window, I think it was. He has now resigned amid bullying allegations. The Minister of State without portfolio no longer has any portfolio or any ministerial position whatsoever. Gavin Williamson, he's gone. Coming up, the cost of living is the cost of lockdown. The catastrophe all around is the consequence of public policy pursued by the government and egged on by an even more feckless opposition. That's the choice in a two-party system. There's the nutso party and the even more nutso party. What it does for the economy, we'll get into with Jasmine Birtles from the Money Magpie. Also a cost of lockdown. And this is a real cost. A generation of wrecked kids, wrecked in the very basics, such as simple human communication. We'll discuss that with Jane Harris, all coming up. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, as membership of Reform UK explodes, is a political revolution imminent? Party leader Richard Tice explains why former Tory members are fleeing the party in their droves. Plus, as America goes to the polls, is the Trump comeback on, and could this be the beginning of the end for Biden? Esteemed US journalist Megyn Kelly breaks down this crunch vote on the future of America, and there's opinion galore from Nigel Farage, Tonya Buxton, and my superstar panel, top Daily Mail columnist Amanda Patel, conservative commentator Reverend Calvin Robinson, and author and journalist Rebecca Reed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GBNews.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
As the old saw has it, 90% of journalism is announcing that Lord Jones is dead to people who never knew that Lord Jones was alive. And that's rather the way I feel about, this is his actual, we said it before the break, this guy, the Right Honourable Sir Gavin Williamson, CBE MP. I have no idea what he did to get a knighthood or be introduced into His Majesty's Most Noble Order of the British Empire, or even why he's on the Privy Council with the Right Honourable. But anyway, he's the Minister of State without portfolio, and this is his resignation letter. There's an ongoing complaints process concerning... I wish he'd just... I'm complying with this process. I recognise these are becoming a distraction for the good. So he's becoming a distraction. So I wish he'd just gone out like he came in and said, "Screw you, loser, I'm out of here." That would be the Gavin Williamson way. Anyway. That's enough of that. Where am I now? Oh yeah, GB News is the People's Channel, so let's chattel the people. We asked you whether you agreed with Dr. Tedros at the WHO that the climate crisis is a health crisis. Ray says, and what crisis will it be tomorrow? That's a very good question. It might be an embarrassing social disease crisis tomorrow. We don't know. All About Opinion says the same WHO that said monkeypox was a crisis until, they couldn't quite get monkeypox to take. They were doing the jabber, 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 said the monkey to the chimp, but it never quite got going. There was that unfortunate Italian who spent a weekend in Spain and came back with a cocktail of HIV, COVID, and the monkeypox, and they were all excited, but we couldn't get quite. This camel pox that Mark Morano was riding around on at the COP27 summit, that's more of a goer than monkeypox. Phil Davis says, what does this guy know about health? Nothing. His job is politics. Well, he knew quite a lot about the rough end of politics, if you know what I mean. Not the Sir Gavin whatnot end, but back when the Chinese decided to pick him out and make him the global colossus of public health. Before we go on, Permit me a word on today's election in the United States. We have breaking news from there too, like Maricopa County. That was ground zero for all the accusations of election fraud in 2020. So they've had a couple of years to practice it and get it right. And what do you know? As of now, a fifth of voting machines in Maricopa County are not working. Golly, you do surprise me. Nigel's doing a splendid job covering it all on the ground all week long, and I've just got one thing to add. The polls will be closing on the East Coast in whatever it is now, 4 or 5 hours' time. And if at 10 p.m. local time, the Republican Senate candidate or gubernatorial candidate is ahead, so you figure you'll turn in, and then you wake up the following day to find a big bunch of Democrat votes mysteriously arrived at 3 in the morning, you'll know that it's just another exercise in pseudo-democracy from the most dirty, stinking, rotten, corrupt electoral system in the Western world, and indeed, by comparison with most of the non-Western world. Americans should be ashamed of it. Everywhere else, Election Day is held on Election Day. That's because the compressed time frame minimizes the opportunity for fraud. If you come up 10,000 votes short, it's hard to steal them if you've only got 2 or 3 hours left. So in the US, it stretches on from weeks beforehand to months afterwards. In the 22nd Congressional District of New York, which is somewhere between the Catskill Mountains and Lake Ontario, the last election was held on November the 3rd, 2020, and the result was announced on February 5th, 2021, or over 3 months later. It takes 1/8 of a congressman's entire 2-year term to count the vote for his 2-year term, whereas in a functioning system such as the United Kingdom's, we'd have had 4 or 5 prime ministers in that time. So if in 5-6 hours' time the usual shenanigans are beginning, we should treat American electoral politics with the same respect we reserve for Belarus or Sudan's. Double-digit inflation is back with us. As we've reported in recent days, the Office for National Statistics says that basic grocery items such as tea and pasta shells have risen by 17%. Fortunately, that's not a problem because wages have gone up by an average 23%. Oh, wait, no, sorry, that's not for you, you loser. That's for chief executives of FTSE 100 companies. The average pay of those CEOs has increased from 3.2 million quid to 3.9 million. Sure, that's just another lousy 700 grand, but it does at least cover your increased energy bill and a couple of boxes of PG tips. So the lockdowns worked out pretty sweet for some fellas. What? Your restaurant went under? Your hair salon went belly up? Tough. If you recall the distinction drawn almost everywhere except Sweden, society is divided into the non-essential, that would be you, and the essential, which is these guys getting the extra 700 grand a year, which I guess is why for these fellas, what the Bank of England says will be the longest recession since the 1920s is working out just swell. Jasmine Birtles of Money Magpie is here. Jasmine, the nature of the economy sort of shifted a bit during the COVID. The kind of what the Americans call the mom and pop businesses had a terrible time, but Globo Megacorp did very well out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you say, Globo Megacorp, the really seriously rich, the billionaires, the Musks, the Jeff Bezos, all of those, they did phenomenally well out of it. Absolutely marvellous, particularly because they're all basically net-based. So everybody was staying at home, went onto the net, all lovely. When we came out, gradually, it went into a bit more reality. But even so, even now, as you say, the mom and pop ones, particularly if they've got a building, if you're on the high street, you may have noticed your high street's got even worse recently. They have the incredibly high energy rates, all of this. Whereas the big conglomerates that can basically work from home or, a beach somewhere, they're doing fine much of the time.
Is there now a real conflict in what it means for the economy to do well? Again, it's an American expression. They talk about the difference between Wall Street and Main Street, all those bricks and mortar businesses. Is that actually, are they actually becoming two separate things? So you have a global enterprise like Amazon that does great because we're all stuck inside, so we have to order everything online. And then there is the rest of the economy, which basically a state like Britain is perfectly happy to write off.
Yes, it really does feel like that. And, you know, I think that there are very obvious there's very obvious help for the big companies. Something that I've been discussing a lot recently is, for example, is central bank digital currencies. It's one of my things, CBDCs. Yeah. And the argument for those always from everybody is, well, you see, it stops tax fraud. And each time I go, yeah, hello, have you seen Apple, Amazon, eBay, all of them?
Yeah.
Tax fraud? I mean, actually, they don't commit tax fraud. They commit legal tax avoidance.
No, because they do all this stuff, you know, with the Irish. You route it through Ireland and then via the Netherlands to Bermuda. And, like, if you're just running a curry house on the high street, you don't actually have the time to figure all that out.
No, you can't. And so the HMRC, they always go for the low-hanging fruit. You know, I would, frankly, if I were there, because they don't get that much help themselves. They're in quite a dire state, I think. So, you have the dice are weighted absolutely towards these big companies, and governments clearly kowtow. I mean, every year, you know, whoever's chancellor says we're going to be tough on tax fraud, tax evasion, and they're not. They actually kowtow to these huge corporations that always get away with tax avoidance because they've got the phenomenal accountants who can do it.
Are they kindred spirits? You know, the G7 guys and these mega global corps, they all pal around at Davos. There's Bill Gates with Rishi Sunak. Just as the COVID years saw a massive transfer of power from the individual to the state, so there was a massive transfer of the economy from small businesses to these essentially global monopolies.
Yeah, absolutely. And they are in bed, definitely. So again, with CBDCs, there are government members and big tech types who are meeting up monthly and in very nice areas to discuss how to create this CBD, this new type of surveillance. And the other thing that's coming up at the moment, and I'm sure you've seen it quite a bit now, is universal basic income, UBI. That, you know, it's a sort of bastard brother of this horrible CBDC as well.
Yeah, basically it's saying you're useless. We got no need for you, but here's some pocket money, so you don't think about going in for violent revolution.
Absolutely,
which is basically terrible times. Where the CBDC is huge, and we will stay on that, Jasmine. It's always great to see you. Thank you very much. Stump the Steyn looms. And we know now, even if the control freaks and self-appointed fact-checkers of Facebook can't admit it, that everything we did in 2020, 2021 made things worse. And in some ways, the economy is the least of it. That's money. But the damage done to our physical and mental health is far more serious. We talk often on this show about those killed and crippled by the COVID vaccines and shamefully treated by a heartless state whose most incompetent apparatchiks get garlanted with knighthoods or a check for 400 grand for turning yourself into a novelty vaudeville act on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. But what we did to a generation of children is particularly appalling, and the consequences will be with us for decades. Jane Harris joins me with more on that next.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week. I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Steyn. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio,
And online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hey, how'd that lockdown work out for your kids? The number of 5 and 6-year-olds who require speech and language assistance in school has now increased by 10%. That's to the point where the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists doesn't actually have enough speech and language therapists to keep up with the demand. Jane Harris is the Chief Executive of Speech and Language UK. Jane, what do you make of this development?
Well, it's really worrying. We actually warned government last year that there were a huge number of children who were behind in speech and language. Last year, it was 1.5 million children. That's what teachers estimated. So that's the sort of the minimum figure, really, because there's probably some children that teachers aren't spotting. But we think now that's gone up to 1.7 million children. So we really need this new government to take this much, much more seriously and to take action, because if they don't, the numbers will grow again.
Well, is there anything they can do if, as the Royal College says, there aren't actually enough language and speech therapists to go round? How on earth are these kids ever going to catch up?
Well, there are some children who have lifelong speech and language challenges who absolutely need to see speech and language therapists, and government could do much, much more to train those therapists to put in action now. It will take some time, however, to train those therapists. But in the meantime, what schools and what the government could do is make sure that teachers have far better training to help the children who have speech and language challenges that can be dealt with in a much, much simpler way. For example, at Speech and Language UK, we run a programme called Talk Boost. That can be run by teaching assistants. They do 3 half-hour slots over 9 weeks. At the end of those 9 weeks, half of children have caught up with their peers. So if we had that kind of programme in every single school across the country, it would then mean the speech and language therapists could purely concentrate on the children who have those lifelong speech and language challenges, some of which are genetic, and we could save that therapist time for those children. But at the moment, government has not done enough to make that happen.
When you say catch up with their peers, isn't the problem, though, that if you're, say, 5 years old, so your entire life has basically been spent in COVID world, where your social skills haven't developed, your basic communication skills haven't developed, when you're 3, 4 and people are wearing masks and you can't read facial cues, isn't the problem about catching up with the peers is that even those peers are behind in communication skills from where people would have been 3 or 4 years ago?
Sorry, I should have said when we say peers, we mean sort of the average for those peers over sort of 10, 20 years. We have sort of general measures for how much, for sort of the kind of speech and language skills that a child should have at that age. I should say that probably from what we've heard from practitioners, the two biggest problems for children during lockdown were not socialising with other children, because that's often where children kind of practice communication skills. And it was also not having enough new experiences. So if you think about it, a child will go to a farm, for example, and learn the word horse and sheep and all of those things. It's when children don't have those new experiences. It wasn't really so much masks that were the issue. It was the sort of not talking to each other, the children, and then not having those new experiences. So it is good to try and do as much of that as possible, but we need much, much more help for teachers. We've heard that 50% of teachers who've trained in the last 5 years do not have enough training to help this group of children. And if 50% of teachers do not have enough training to help 1.7 million children, we've got a real problem, and government needs to wake up to it.
Well, as you said, you saw where this was headed last year, and you spoke up about it last year. In a sense, these were totally foreseeable consequences. So why did the educational establishment, never mind the government as a whole, choose to go along with this shutdown and isolation of the young?
I don't think it's so much about why they went along with it. I think it's more about why is our educational establishment for years and years focused so much on reading and writing and maths and not understood that spoken language underpins all of those things. It's much, much harder to learn to read, to learn to write, to learn to do maths if you're struggling with basic spoken language. That's the shift that we really need from our education system, is to realise that if you don't help children with those speech and language challenges, some of which are genetic and some of which are lifelong, we will not get the results that we want from our children. And we've just seen that our primary age children have had the worst results in reading, writing of maths for years and years and years. That won't change if we don't tackle speech and language challenges.
No, and that's why the first 2, 3, 4 years of life, as you say, when you're going to a farm and you're learning about horses and all that, that's why it's so important. And it's not just reading, writing and arithmetic, but the concern is that years beyond that, there'll be problems in foreign languages and chemistry and history and all kinds of other things too. Thank you very much, Jane. Let's hope we can right this wrong for our kids. That is going to do it for us tonight, but I have some fantastic news for you. The one and only Dan Wootton is here, right now. What you got, Dan?
Oh, Mark, well, I've been watching you tonight, and of course you covered the breaking news of Gavin Williamson. I mean, to me, Mark, this feels like the Westminster blob, the MSM believe this is the biggest story in the world right now. So they're going to be empowered by this, aren't they, number one? And number two, it just shows, I think, Mark, how out of touch our media elites and our political establishment are. But we will be looking at it. Also, interestingly, Richard Tice will be here. He's the leader of Reform UK. He says that actually he's had over 4,000 Conservatives join since Rishi Sunak was installed in that anti-democratic coup. Plus, we've got Nigel Farage from the States. Meghan Kelly, this is going to be good because she's gone viral over the past few days. Meghan Markle versus Meghan Kelly. So it's the big face-off between the both of them tonight. Antonia Buxton, too, on this COVID amnesty.
No time for that on my side. And I back Meghan Kelly over Meghan Markle anytime. You're absolutely right. I don't think this first time in a long broadcasting career I have ever had to say, breaking news, the Minister of State without portfolio has resigned. Dan will be all over that. It's all coming up after the break. Stay safe, stay free.
We
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio.
And online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes,